Now, where did I put it? Here it is.
Welcome to the Toolbox, where my guests and I discuss the tools they use every day to manage life, trauma, and everything in between. It may not be applicable right now, but it's another tool for your toolbox. And I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tools for the Toolbox. I am Chance Burles, aka Big Bird. I have another outstanding episode for you all today, and I'm going to kick it off the same way I always do with same question. Who are you, and what is your military background?
Thanks for having me on. So my name's Sam, and my military background is I spent just short of 13 years in the Royal Marines from 2002 to 2015, doing various roles, operational around the world.
Yeah, and any particular places that stand out where you were like, dang, that was crazy, or that was pretty awesome?
Yeah, so every tour was extremely different. The first operational tour I did was Northern Ireland, but by then, that wasn't, a kinetic tour by any means, but it was a great chance to really practice your shouldering skills in some ways, even though it was an operational tour. You're not there to practice, but that was a great tour for that. And then moving into Afghanistan, I did 3 tours of duty over there, so 6-7 month tours each time. The first one probably being the more kinetic. You'll know about Afghan, obviously being there yourself. Each tour, extremely different. First one, very few IEDs, if any, very kinetic. Second one, IEDs started to come out, still kinetic. And then the last tour, it was just IEDs, not a single round fired from the location I was in. So extremely different tours. Put them next to each other, yeah.
Yeah, those are weird. Were you out in, imagine, Helmand? Or were
so we went down to Gamsea. That was my first tour. It was Zulu Company. So I spent the majority of my career at 4-5 Commando. All my operational tours were with them. So down Gamsea on the first tour. Second tour was around Sangin Valley. And then third tour, various PBs dotted around, smaller PBs. So yeah, I got around, but all very different.
Yeah, they're it was weird, man. Like I was there in 2008 and in Kandahar, and all the guys we got trained up through 2007 from the guys that were there in 2006, the guys that were doing Op Medusa and like running gunfights and kinetic movements and like the the Battle of the White School and all the major full-scale battles where they were running solid kinetic operations through the whole tour. So that was our training. We're all like expecting, okay, we're going to be doing gunfights the whole time. It's going to be awesome, blah, blah, blah. And then we got there and there were just IEDs everywhere. like I got in maybe 4 firefights the whole tour over 8 months. Wow.
Yes. So it's crazy how they changed, and that just shows you that, Taliban's tactics at the end of the day. They had the right tactics. They realized they weren't winning the firefights. As I said, the first tour, every single day, it would be odd if in fact, it happened every single day we were there down in Gamsea, getting indirect fire or direct fire. But as I said, it changed dramatically by the second time I came back. But what was good was to see the progression. Third tour, we were very much hearts and minds. We didn't actually lose anybody on our last tour of duty, which is really good. We did have someone lose both the legs, but we didn't actually lose anyone, which was amazing. Second tour, I think we lost 9 people, maybe more.
Yeah.
So
how long you been out then?
So I left in 2015. So quite a while now. We're in 2023 now. So
a little while, yeah.
Time goes quick.
Yeah, it does. So what do you do now?
So I actually work in the wellbeing sector. So what I actually do now is my daytime job is I work for an amazing charity called Rugby League Cares, which actually started off in the rugby league community by former rugby players, helping rugby players out that were struggling, from the kind of pro teams down to children's, women's, disabled teams. And then they actually moved into the rugby league community. And the rugby community, I don't know if you've got the equivalent over there, but they're so similar to our military community. They're kind of a pro athlete up until about 30, and then they have this big transition as we do. They have very similar mindsets when they are a pro athlete, kind of burn the candle at both ends as military tend to do. It's a really interesting transition. But what I do for that charity is the NHS kind of seen what they were doing, and I go into hospitals every day and speak to NHS staff about, we actually talk about the toolbox, funny old thing with your podcast name, and kind of give them tools for the toolbox on how to deal with the stresses that they're dealing with every day. Because the number one reason why people are off in the NHS over here is stress. So I get to go and deliver workshops every day. I absolutely love it. And then my nighttime job is I've got a mentoring business of my own, and do one-on-one clients, and we've got a good group as well online that we keep each other accountable and encourage each other. So yeah, I'm busy Monday to Friday. I'm busy, but I've now taken weekends off to myself. I've realised 7 days a week isn't wise to work.
Yeah, smart. There's I think we all learn that pretty fast too. You get out and you're just like, all right, let's get it. And you just start doing whatever it is, and you do it at the full tilt until you go, wait a second.
It's when you're passionate about something, you don't see it as work. So I get up, I'm interested in it. I have a real passion for everything I do. So to switch off is difficult at times.
Yeah. So did you got out in 2015? Did you just dive right into that, or did you take some time off? Did you?
No, not at all.
How did that go?
So the transition was pretty tough. I initially left. I don't know how you work it over there, but when we can kind of leave while we're still being paid for a little bit. So I had a kind of crossover time of still being military, but joining Civvy Street, and I actually got this. So just a bit of background. So I've moved to a place called Chorley, but that's not where I'm from at all. I don't have family here or anything, but I had a daughter here. So I wanted to be a more present father when I left the military. So I moved here for her. But I didn't have anything set here, so I had to start a whole new life. I had a few things fall through when I left. I was in the process of buying a house, and then it failed its checks, and I was living in that house at a time, so I ended up kind of homeless, jobless, all this kind of crazy stuff that happens. I was very fortunate that I'm a member of a church here, and some people there put me up in their houses. They were really, really good to me, looked after me and helped me get back on my feet. But job-wise, I worked on an egg farm initially for 9 weeks and got to learn what actual graft was, kind of 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, stood in the end of the conveyor belt. Crazy. But I got to the point of that where I was just like, no, this is, for me, this isn't living. This is not me. I kind of quit that job. Then I went away for a little bit. I went to Zambia for about 10 days on a kind of solo mission trip and did some work over there, for voluntary work. And then as soon as I came back from there, I actually worked in the education system in a school for children that had been excluded from mainstream. So I was kind of like a high support worker for them, which is quite a fulfilling job. But again, the education system over here can be quite toxic. And although I went in there quite positive, by the end, my mental health was starting to take its toll, just being around, and not the pupils, the staff. So I ended up leaving that job, and I set up my own personal training business. And then through the back of that, I was actually friends with, I don't know if you watched the show over there, the SAS Who Dares Wins show. So I knew Ollie Ollerton, and he kind of rang me up one day and said, Sam, I'm kind of running these corporate and public events outside of the TV show. So I worked with those guys, Ollie and Foxy, Billy sometimes, off camera, doing different events for a good 2 years through COVID. I helped them set up an app for mental health, Already 360. And then just out of COVID, I then set up my own business, and then walked into this charity as well in May last year. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Busy bee, but lots of different stuff.
So, well, let's say if you could go back right now with all the stuff you've learned and talk to yourself, what would be the one piece of advice that you'd give yourself to make it a little bit easier to get through your transition a little bit smoother?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think everyone's different. For me, I would really have a look at identity and being your authentic self through that. And I think one thing we find in the military is we we change in the military, whether we like it or not. We become institutionalized. They're making us into something that they need, essentially. And I lost who I was. So when I left, I actually didn't know who I was. If someone was to ask me what I did, I'd very quickly say, oh, well, I was a Royal Marine. I wouldn't really go into what I do now. And that was what I fully identified with. So I would kind of recommend speaking back to myself about, take some time out when you leave. Really look at what your values are, who you are, what your passions are, and then start going down that road rather than just jumping in headfirst into a job. Because if you jump in, as I found, to a job that, work 9 to 5, gives you very little time to actually do these things of finding yourself. And then how do you find that space then? Because we've all got to pay bills. So then you end up in this kind of secure job maybe, but you're not happy. But you need to get out of it for your own mental well-being, but you can't afford to get out of it. You kind of get in that trap. So looking back, I'd say, look after your finances in the military. Maybe something else. I didn't do that great. Get a little pot of money. So then when you leave, you can have that kind of processing time for the transition.
That's a great point. I get that quite a bit actually, is, telling yourself patience, just have patience. Like you don't need, it doesn't need to be right now. Just slow it down, process what's happening, allow yourself to go through it. You said a statement. We said the same thing as when we get out. It's like, well, I'm going back to Civvy Street, or I'm going to be a dirty civvy again. Ha ha ha. And I realize now that that's actually very, it's a very toxic outlook, because when you complete basic training, you're not a civvy anymore, and you're never going to be again. That's over. you are now 100% a soldier until you're out. And then once you're out, you have to get through this transition period where you're no longer a civilian, but you're no longer a soldier. And so now I tell people whenever they, they're like, oh, I'm going to be a civvy again. It's like, no, you're a veteran across the board. That will be on your tombstone the day you die, right? It'll say Royal Marine Commando, or it'll say, former Canadian Engineers, whatever. But the concept of that, being able to, that takes time. It really, to really find yourself, to really go, okay, now I'm this. I was that. That's great. But now I'm this. What do you think was was there a turning point for you? Because for me, there was a day I walked into my living room and my son flinched just at the, me entering the room. And that was a real turning point for me, because I was like, it's not okay. So what I've been doing so far has been wrong, and therefore I need to change. I can't force the other people. Was there a turning point for you where you were just like, this is a no-go?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few. I never learned lessons the first time, but but it's interesting what you say there. Get back to that. I didn't see myself as a civilian beforehand, because I joined from school. I'd never done civvy street. I'd never really had a normal job other than the ones you have when you're at school, like a paper round. So I was stepping into unknown worlds. So there was elements of me that was actually excited, because everything's new. But that excitement, as you know, it doesn't last that long. It's like, okay, I'm excited. You'll step into anything because you think, oh, it's different. I'll jump into that. But, very quickly, again, if it's not what you're meant to be doing, you're going to be unhappy in it if you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, my turning point was, so interestingly, I'll be interested to know your thoughts on this, but a lot of people I speak to in the military when we're talking, it's kind of the 2-year point I see that people seem to really start to struggle. 18 months, 2 years, they kind of can live off that excitement or the change, or they're getting through, but around 18 months, 2 years, they seem to really start to struggle. And I was probably in that boat. And I started to struggle with my mental health. And a good friend of mine reached out to me and basically said, if you don't, go to a doctor, then I'll be ringing them up myself, type thing. So I did. I seek the doctor. I'm not saying that was the best help in the world, but I did end up seeing a therapist, and had some therapy for a while. And I'll be honest, at the time I didn't feel like it was working. And on my last therapy session, he said something to me, and that was my catalyst to change. And he sat me down at a table at the end of a 3-hour session, and he said, Sam, I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to think it's stupid, but I want you to think about your answer. I was like, all right, ask away. And he said, do you actually want to change? And when he asked me that question, at the time with my headspace, I went, yeah, it is a stupid question because I've just sat with you for 3 hours and I keep coming back to talk to you.
Yep.
But actually, when I reflected on that over a few weeks, it was like a light bulb moment. And I've not had many light bulb moments in my life, but that was really one. And it was, hold on, I keep repeating the same bad habits over and over again and expecting change.
Yep.
And, you know, it wasn't happening. And that was when I changed. I gave up drinking and started to change my life, started to be consistent with good habits, started to truly be my authentic self and live in that. And since that day of making that change, I've been good and getting better. And growth happens all the time. I surround myself with good tribe and everything changed. So for me, it was just a question with a light bulb moment. Yeah. That's
a hard question, man. And you know, I've asked other people that question. I've been asked that question. And when you're just like you said, when you take the time to really think on it and go, how bad do I want change? Like, do I really want to be something else right now? Because that's what we're asking, right? If you want change, there's going to be things that you have to sacrifice that you perhaps like or are used to, or, you know, I've heard so many people say, oh, you know, I'm an asshole. Just, you know, that's the way it is. It's like, are you though? Are you just an asshole? Is that like how you want to live your life as that guy? And they go, well, I mean, I'm like, because we're having a pleasant conversation. I'm not angry. Like I don't think you're an asshole right now because we're having this conversation. But it is such a fundamental question, especially as an advocate, as, you know, when you're trying to help other people, they have to want to do it.
Yeah.
I can't make you do anything.
And that's a big learning curve, isn't it? When, you know, you start this podcast because you want to help people. I have no doubt you speak to some people and you want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them, but change has to come from the internal when they're ready. Yeah. But what I did find was, you know, I did a few different therapy courses and stuff. And at the time, I wasn't utilizing those tools. But when I did make the changes, all those things I learned, I was like, oh, and they start to come back to you, and then you start to live in them, you start to use them. So I do always remind myself of that now. Like, that won't ever, knowing that I can't change someone won't stop me from trying to share some tools with them, because I know when they're ready to change, they can use or not use some things I've shared with them, which I think is so vital.
That's exactly it, man. That's the reason I chose the name Tools for the Toolbox. I heard it. You probably heard it so many times in training too. And, you know, you have to give some piece of context to an idea. And I got this from instructors all the time, right? And you're like, you may never need this, but it's another tool for your toolbox, right? And you're like, at the time I was like, okay, great. If I don't need this, why are you teaching it? But again, after hindsight, when you can actually add that little bit of experience, and you start putting that into what you're doing, you go, oh, that's where it applies. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, it's so true.
I struggled with this quite a bit, actually, in my initial transition process, was the way in which I spoke to myself, right? Because especially in the military, especially in the combat arms, we talk shit to ourselves all the time, right? You're not good enough to beat that guy. Come on, you can catch that one. Come on, you can do it. We have that drive to be better, but when you don't have anyone else like literally in front of you to kind of chase, then you're just like, oh man, especially with social media too. Like the words, the way we talk to each other, or talk to not even each other but ourselves, it was brutal. And the Canadian military is so small. Like we have.
All right.
I did I think we had, when I was in, I think we were sitting at like 80,000 troops total. That's reg force and reserve.
That's
We did
big
not.
compared to our Marines. I think we have 5,000 maybe.
That's Army, Navy, and Air Force.
Oh, okay.
And reserves.
Wow.
We are a very small force. At one point, the NYPD police department, the NYPD had more officers than we had soldiers.
Wow.
In our entire military. It was ridiculous. And we were sending guys to Afghanistan over and over and over and over again. But got a little off topic there. But
that negative self-talk that you're talking about, I talk about that a lot. A big thing about change is self-awareness. We don't realize, and one of the biggest things I see in people don't like to hear it or admit that they have it, is the victim mentality mindset. And especially for veterans, for military guys, it's the last thing that you want to say is that you admit that you've got a victim mentality, because you've just come from the environment that you've come from where you wouldn't believe that was a thing. But it is just the biggest problem. You got to change that victim mentality, into, more of a kind of creator mindset. It's a massive, massive thing, but people don't realize they're in it.
Do you think that that's, I've been trying to figure out like where this comes from, because you're right. We do come from a very alpha direct mentality of, I'm going to say this and you're going to say that. But do you think that that victim mentality, I at least believe, I think it comes from the fact that we're just taken care of, right? From very early on, right on the get-go, you're told where to go, what to do, what time to show up, what clothes you're wearing, what to expect. Yeah. And so then you head off to training, and then you think you're all like, yeah, I'm doing all this stuff and it's awesome, I'm going hard, but you're actually being taken care of. Like, people are paying you, your banking is already taken care of, your friggin' food is taken care of. No, you're not doing that as a brand new private, right? you're just showing up with a gun like, hey. Do you think that's where that mentality comes from? I think, at least I've been thinking about it last little while. That's where I'm seeing it from, but what do you think?
Definitely a big part of that. Without a doubt, you get a lot of things done for you. And also, the military is a selfish job. Make no bones about it. It's a selfish lifestyle. It's not a job, is it? It's a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to put that before anything else. Whether you like it or not, you don't really have a choice, because you're away so much. So you're prioritizing that over everything else. So there's that element of it. Without a doubt, I do think the military, from the time I were in, I believe it's maybe changing a bit, but it is a toxic environment in some other ways. We're great in some ways with the brotherhood and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But things like coping strategies, I mean, at this day and age, to think the best way to deal with a 6-7 month kinetic operation is to send you for Cyprus for 3 days with all you can drink alcohol, and then send you home, is absolutely ridiculous.
And think that's fine. Yeah.
I think that's fine. And I have no doubt, if something were to kick off again, it would be the same format.
Yeah.
Certain things are changing from what I speak to guys still in. There's more of awareness. But at the same time, if you're struggling in the military and you go and see someone, you're going to get downgraded, aren't you? If you're downgraded, you're non-operational. If you're non-operational, you're outside the loop. If you're outside the loop, you're an outcast. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, because you need that. I was in school at one point. I was doing I think it was a communications course after I'd gotten out of the Army, and they were talking about, how do you motivate people, and what are some styles of motivation, and how can you do these things? And I put my hand up and I was like, guilt is a great motivator. And the teacher was like, and I was in a room full of girls too. And she was like, no, the guilt is not a great motivator. And I was like, oh, trust me, I could motivate you pretty quickly if I get you to be guilty about the right things. And within the Army, at least here, we do this all the time, right? The instructors are like, really? You can't keep up with that guy? You can't do that? I'm 40 years old and I'm outrunning you, right? You're just layering guilt on like, you should be better. You're sucking right now. Why can't you be better, right? In training, it works well because it is a motivator, right? You want those types of people who are like, fuck you, I can be better. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be better. Those are the type of people you want. But
Yeah.
later on, once you're actually like in your units, that stuff carries on. And then that added guilt and that added pressure and all the added stuff starts to like layer on top of layer. And so like I can see why it's so challenging to stay true to yourself without just giving into that toxicity and giving into that mentality. I know guys that are, you could put them into a room with 30 toxic people, and at the end of the day, you'd have 31 awesome, motivated people, right? I know a couple of dudes like that, right? But I most of the people I know, if you put one dude in a group of 30 people who are toxic, you're going to have 31 toxic people at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, and it's so true what you're saying there about, that guilt thing. That's just brought me back some memories from training. So I actually had to wear military glasses in training. I was the only one in my troop. These big black things, and they made me wear them. Yeah. But I had one of the training team. He would be beside me for the first 9 weeks, and every single yomp we did, everything we did, he'd just be next to me going, I am not letting anyone join the Royal Marines who wears glasses in my time. You will quit when we get back. And it was constant bullying. But they used to make me stand in front of the troop and turn my back away from it because I was a disgrace. But and what's interesting is so before I joined the military as a child, I was quite an emotional child. I used to think I didn't love school. I did okay. I got my GCSEs. But my parents used to say I had emotional intelligence rather than maybe school intelligence. And I used to think that was like a dig, going, yeah, you just calling me thick. A nice way of calling me thick. And then through that process of joining the military and then through the process of war, I became emotionally dead. Mm-hmm. And then when you leave the military, basically when you're in the military, you're always working towards something. It doesn't matter whether you've been on operations or not. I've realized from speaking to veterans, because at the end of the day, you're constantly working towards something. You don't know what's next. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you've joined the military, I would think, most likely to go to war. So you've got this constant build up operation. So when you actually leave the military, it's like and that's where the kind of victim mentality can set in, because you're only now being able to kind of take down your defenses a little bit and go, oh, I'm not building up to something anymore. I don't have a threat to build up to anymore. What do I do with all this kind of angst inside of me? What do I do with, well, now I'm emotionally dead. Why aren't I emotional about anything? And you're kind of dealing with all those things. So I can see, very quickly how people can go into that victim mentality.
Oh, yeah.
But you got to be so self-aware of it. And then you got to put the hard work in. And, you'll know it's hard work. If you want to get through it, it's hard work. But guess what? It's hard work not to do it. It's harder work because you're going to go down a darker and darker path. So it's worth the hard work, but you have to put in the work.
Yeah, that's the tough part, man, is like, I've been down the rabbit hole a couple of times, and it's hard. It's a hard slog getting back up to where you need to be just to start the work to get to a better place, right? Like,
yeah.
In order to keep getting higher, in order to grow at all, that initial, like, just digging yourself out of the hole, right? Like,
yeah.
That's a hard slog, and then the work begins. And I think that's where a lot of people, they fall off the wagon, they hit a wall. I had a friend of mine who, unfortunately, he was killed in a training accident right after I got out. But I was telling him, we were out in the training area, and I was like, yeah, we only got a couple months left, and then I'm out, I'm going home, I'm doing all my things, it's going to be awesome, I'm going to do this, and this, right? And he was like, yeah, I tried that once. I got out, I was out for maybe 6 months, and I went right back in. It's just, I couldn't deal with the people and the regular everyday stuff, because life outside the military is not as easy as we believe it's going to be. Right? We always think like, oh, it's all relaxed and no one cares, and I can grow a beard and I can, whatever. But the issue that we don't really think of is that, man, that brotherhood is gone, right? Where when you were struggling at your worst in the field, where, your legs are dead and you can't move and everything hurts, and you look at a dude across from you and he rocks up and you're like, okay, or I guess we're going, and you just carry on because it's part of the group, part of the culture, everybody's moving.
Yeah.
And when you leave, like I had I used this analogy where the Army, especially, it's a friggin' train, and it's constantly moving. And while you're on the train, you don't really feel like you're moving, right? You're just working and you're working and you're working. And that's one of the things you just said was, when you're on that train and you have an emotional issue, you can just keep working, right? There's always another job. There's another course, right? And you there's stuff to do, right? So you just shove it back. Okay, I got to do this, and shove it back. I got to do this, and then you get out of the Army, and it's like jumping off a train, right? Like sometimes you can tuck and roll. You might, if you know how to PFL, great. That's awesome. Some guys, set it up. I've talked to a few dudes that they had a job lined up afterwards that they were working with another military guy or another teammate or something like that they had a just smoother transition out because it was kind of a continual step off. And I know guys that, jumped out and hit a friggin' tree. They're just like, all of a sudden everything falls apart.
And it is what you're going into when you leave, maybe before you left, you had something, maybe you had a trade that you enjoyed and you just wanted the military life. Maybe, there is these people that step out and go into good stuff, but the majority of people that I know, there's always phases when people leave the military. There seems to be like over here, it's like the oil rig phase. They'll all leave for the money on the oil rigs. Then they'll leave for money to do CP work. Then they'll leave money to do, wind turbines. There's these kind of seasons of, you can make £300 a day, £400. Yeah, I'll just leave to go and do that. And you just think about the financial goal, not thinking that's a pretty miserable job, actually. And I do find a lot of times as well, a lot of guys go into the CP world, and I would say they actually haven't gone through the transition phase yet because they've left the military and gone straight into a very similar environment, working with very similar people. And they almost haven't transitioned into the civilian world. But I will say, when you talk about brotherhood, and, I had brotherhood like no other. Some of my best mates in the military, some are no longer with us, but the ones that are, really close. And I did see this difference between civilians and military. But I would say now I've chosen the environment I'm around and the tribe around me. A lot of my best mates are civilians, and I do have that brotherhood, especially, speaking about the rugby world again, they're so similar to us. I find that we can connect with people that have been through similar journeys. And most people have been through transition in their life when you think about it. So, everyone's got a transition story and how they dealt with it. And, brotherhood can be formed through that as well. Absolutely.
I'm big into jiu-jitsu right now. I'm loving life.
Me too.
Getting strangled. I'm looking, at least what my professor is telling me, I'm looking at my purple belt in the spring. So
good.
Hopefully I don't know. I don't really care that much. I just like jumping in and trying to strangle people. It's so much fun.
Everyone says they don't care about belts, but we do.
I mean, they're nice. It's a nice, like, little check in the box, right? And get a little, okay, you're progressing. It is nice. It's kind of similar to like rank too, right? Like when you first get in, there's this like, I'm gonna be a sergeant major one day, or I'm gonna be a sergeant. Like you want that next little bit of responsibility, but you also realize, like, I don't really want to do the job. I just kind of want the pay raise with maybe a little bit of the respect. Don't really want the job. And it's similar actually. When I got out, being an engineer, explosives are my jam. I love blowing stuff up. Had lots of fun. Here in Alberta, oil rigs are always there. And, mines are always there. There's always looking for, we got the mountains right next to us. So, you can do avalanche control and stuff like that. So you just fly around in helicopters, dropping explosives off doing avalanche control. And I was looking into those a lot when I got out, but then I realized, like, it's going to be 3 weeks on, 1 week off. You're going to be doing 4 months out. You're, whatever the tours of that particular job set are going to be. And I got out of the Army so I could be with my family. Like, I don't want to leave all the time to go do that stuff. And again, that's a hard acknowledgement when you go, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is that money that I'm getting right now worth the time away still?
Yeah. And For me, it wasn't. I did the bodyguard course, the close protection course, could have gone away. I left for the exact same reason, to be with my daughter. Yeah. And I had big life changes. I was no longer in line with the way military people choose to live their lives, and had to leave. But yeah, definitely if you chase finances, you're going to be unhappy because you'll never catch them.
The thing is that really what we all are looking for is we're looking for some sort of peace. And I think, especially with the Army kind of taking care of money for so long, like you just always used to having a check in the bank. It's just always there. When you get out, that's your first, like, oh my God, I have to have money. I got to get paid because that check's not going to be there anymore. So that initial thought of, oh my God, I got to make sure I have money. But again, I came to kind of a similar realization as you did, was like, the money's useless if I don't know what the frick I'm doing. Like if I'm sitting in a pile of money at the end of the night by myself, whoop-de-doo, that's not helping me in any way. What about once you started your journey, once you got through that initial phase, you said that you don't really hang around the military culture anymore. Has the culture changed? Do you think like in the military? Obviously you've changed, but has the military culture changed to a point where you don't want to be involved in it anymore, or is it just a personal like?
So I think the culture is changing 100% in the fact when I first joined, it was a big drinking culture. And it's not so much anymore. But also when I joined, everyone would eat together. Everyone would spend time together, share rooms, all that. Yeah. Now it's solo accommodation. No one eats together because the eating situation changed in the military. When I joined, it came out your wages, the food. Yep. So you just went and ate together, and then pay as you dine came in. So you had to pay for it. And guys were like, well, I'm not paying for it. I'll just go to the supermarket and I'll cook something in my room. So in some ways, when I look at the culture now, guys seem a little bit more switched on in the fact of their own health. They care about the way they look, their clothing. And, you know, they seem pretty smart and intelligent. A lot of them, I don't think, are maybe career-minded now. I think they want to be in for the 4 or 5 years, gain experience in life, go off to do bigger and better things. I guess my old school mindset would struggle with that. I joined to do 22. I know I didn't do 22, but that was always my mentality. I would never thought about joining to go and then do something else. So mindset's changed. But, you know, I've been to a couple. We have something called top tables. When you've done your full career, your 22 years, you can invite people that you spent your career with to come and kind of say goodbye. And I did a couple of those the other year. I've got another one actually this year. And when I go into those, I realize, I have changed from the military culture. There's still a lot of it that I don't like. You know, without going too deep into it, in the last year in my military, I found faith, Christianity, and it just wasn't, the military's not the place for that. It just, my lifestyle changed dramatically. And the military lifestyle just wasn't for me anymore. So I had to step away from it.
Makes sense. Did you, once you realized that, did you have a hard time like accepting it? We have a similar thing they're called DWDs, or departure with dignities, where, you know, if you're leaving, again, you get to invite a bunch of people out and they have a night at the mess and everyone gets together and it's a great time, big party, right? Once you went to that first one where you realized, like, man, I'm not really in this crew anymore, did that take you a while to get over, where you're like, did it hurt for a while, or was it just kind of like I'm done?
Yeah, I think it's a good realization, because I think we should always be changing. If I was going back into that environment and could jump right back in and be the old person I was, then I haven't really changed at all, have I? So it's good in that aspect. And I'm not saying that I don't get along with the people anymore. You know, some of my best mates are still in, and obviously I'm going to these things, but the environment for me just isn't the environment I like to surround myself with. So, you know, I can step into it and see everyone, which is nice. You hear some of the old stories and then go home. One of the things I did struggle with, I don't know if you did, but when I left, I kind of cut the military guys off for a while. I really wanted to make some changes in my life and kind of cut people off, and then I let them slowly back into my life. And I found that anytime I was around a few of them, I would kind of always leave on a bit of a downer afterwards. Maybe you'd had such like a good time. I'm like, oh, you kind of miss an element of that. But as years have gone on, I kind of miss that less. Yeah, I don't need it so much.
Yeah, basically, I went through very similar thing. I got out and I was like, I'm done. I like tried to not be as army as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And over time, there are things that you miss, and there's time with the boys and being out in the field and doing stupid stuff, and it's all great. And I saw a picture one day of some of the younger guys that were in the unit just as I was leaving, who are now like sergeants and warrants and stuff, right? And and they were sitting in front of a helicopter, and they were like, "Yeah, doing air assault stuff." And I was like, "That sounds like fun. Wish I could be there." And then I was like, "Wait a second." They probably had to go through like 14 hours of just crap. Admin and sitting on a tarmac and blah, blah, blah. And then they got like a 5-minute, trip on a helicopter, and then they took some action photos. And I was like, I don't really want to do that anymore.
And then at the time, no one had cameras. So I don't have a lot of photos from those early times either. I don't know about you. But,
I do this every once in a while now. Anytime I start to get nostalgic about the army, I call one of my buddies who's still in, and I just go, "Hey man, what are you up to?" And they'll be like, "I'm in some friggin' exercise in Wainwright, or I'm on some course engagement." I'm like, "Cool, man, that's all I needed."
Yeah, quick reminder.
Call it a day.
I kind of have you might see in the background, I have some military stuff in this room. So I have zero military stuff in my house, and I don't really talk about the military too much outside of my house, but I have one room, so this is my study, and I think I've got to a stage where I can look at it and look back and go, oh yeah, like I've done that. Because at the time I didn't want to look at anything. So, but I just like it in one room. I don't want it to, like you said about that whole veteran thing, people can get really caught up on that identity as well. I'm a veteran. I'm like, no, you're a lot more than a veteran. That's not who you are. That's something you've done. Like you said, be proud of it, but don't be throwing that label around every day, every time you get the opportunity, because it's not who you are. And if it is, you're living in the past, you're not moving forward. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it's a piece of the whole, right? It sure. Yeah. You're a veteran. Yeah. Good. Excellent. And we call them vet bros over here, where, they walk around with the, still in the cry pants, and they're walking around with the, and like being, it's almost like those, when you were first in basic and everyone walked around with their freaking dog tags out, because they're proud of being part of the team, and then but they're just sitting there just like, oh god, guys. And I remember doing that stuff too. It was just silly, but
we were super disappointed when we got our dog tags. I don't know about yours, but I was a circles, so they're actually like dog tags, where you're brought up watching these American movies, and they're these kind of,
they got the two tags,
little rectangles, and then we get these two little circle ones. We're like, hold on, these aren't the one in the movies. I remember being like really disappointed, going, these aren't dog tags.
We still use this very similar style that we used in World War II, actually. So it's a single tag, and it's got a like a perforation down the center. Okay. So they're just it's a double of itself, right? And then you snap one off, take that with you if that.
Yeah, that's what we have. Yeah, we have the same, but they're just circle metal ones. I've got mine somewhere. Yeah, probably a bit rusted.
I was a little bummed out at mine, where I had mine hanging in my truck. They were my original dog tags that I got in basic. Unfortunately, the way ours sit a lot, because they're big rectangles, they sit on your chest. You put your arm on top of them, and they snap.
Okay.
And so a lot of guys have them broken and they have to be replaced, but I still had mine from basic. They were hanging in my truck, and then someone broke into my truck and stole them. And I was a little bummed out. And my psychologist was like, had I known you had those in your truck, I would have told you got rid of them a while ago. So I don't feel bad for you. I was like,
it's kind of like a constant memory type thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it makes sense now to look back on it. But I was a little bummed that I lost them, but whatevs. So what do you got? You're doing lots of good work now, lots of helping other people. What's the next stage? What are you doing? What do you got planned in the next little while? Especially for 2023, you got a whole year ahead of you. What are you going to do?
Yeah, so I'm a big one for goal setters, goal setting. So I kind of have daily, weekly, monthly, and then yearly goals. So I break it down into lots of milestones. Although I do believe goals are just for direction.
Yeah.
I'm long in the tooth now of realizing that you feel accomplished by achieving a goal. It's very much you achieve it and then it's a what next moment. So, this year, as I said, I love my job, my day job and my own business. So, I put my all into those things and be present when I'm doing them. I think that's a big thing. But this year, growing my own business outside of the work will be a big one for me. I've kind of just got a new platform, which I'm trying to get to grips with. So I'll be kind of doing some online courses on there at night times and a physical retreat later in the year, and then just build my client base with that. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wise, I haven't competed as a black belt yet. I just got my black belt at the end of the year. So
nice. Congrats, man.
Thank you. So later on in the year, I'll be out trying out the black belt. I've fought some black belts in the past, but I haven't fought as a black belt. So I'll have to get out competing. And I've got multiple goals, kind of physical ones, hobby ones, work ones, family ones, relationship ones. I think it's really important to look at all aspects of your life and give yourself some direction. So, but just every day being present and, living in my values and keep growing, I think is super important. So,
that's fantastic. It really is. And you're absolutely right in that, like, you can set a goal, and once you hit that goal, there is a moment of like, okay, well, now what? Now that's done, right? What do I do next? I had a big realization of that. Someone told me once, actually, it was when I left the military, and I'd just signed up for the Pan Ams in New York, Pan Am No Gis, and I said, if I won that, I think I'd be happy in life. I think that's me accomplished. Like, that's where my mindset was back then. All in a day.
So I signed up and I flew out to New York and I won it. And literally within a couple of minutes, I had that what next moment. That's what they told me what would happen. I was like, oh, okay. So we don't get fulfillment from goals. Let's just keep moving. And it's never left me.
That's a great lesson to learn too, especially on a win, right? A lot of people don't learn that until they get a big win. But to realize it in that win, not like down the road afterwards where you go, oh right, that's what happened. That's
it was pretty instant. Even amazing. Like things like your black belt and that, you obviously you're on that journey now. That's it. I was back to training on the Monday. There was no grand speeches. It was nothing, just back at it. Nothing's changed. You're the same person as you were the week before. You just change colour of your belt. So, that's life, isn't it? So I think that's why it's really important to really love what you do.
Yeah.
I actually, a good friend of mine, the one who actually helped me get the job into the Rugby League Cage charity, is called Bob Bezic. He's a pro rugby player. He'd be great on this podcast, by the way. Yeah. He's not a veteran though, but he's a rugby player.
I talk to everybody. I like talking to veterans specifically because it's easy to talk to other veterans.
Well, I got him to talk to my online group, and he said a line, a kind of throwaway line, I think, at a time, but it really hit me. And he said, find something in your life that you can't complete. I thought, it's really good, because you got to be passionate about it then, And I thought, that's really good. What do I have in my life where I can't complete it? I'm just doing it because I love it, because I'm passionate about it. I think that's a good thing, because sometimes we are too goal-driven, especially military. We like ticking boxes.
Oh, yes.
We're bred for that. So what can I do next? What can I do next? So I quite like that line. So it's not mine. But there you go.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing line. I'm thinking I'm going to steal it. I am. And if you don't mind, hook me up with his contact information. I will reach out to him. We'll get him on the podcast, because I will absolutely. Everybody's tools. Everybody has different tools, and we're not. We don't hold. We don't hold all the tools in the Army, right? Like we can't all just be like, oh yeah, this is great. We're gonna be teaching the world how to do things. No, like we all learn from each other. So I'm absolutely down to talk to everybody.
Like you said, you know about veterans because you are a veteran, but everybody goes through transitions. So at some point, everybody struggles with identity and looking at who they are. So everyone's got a story to tell, which is awesome.
100%. If anybody wanted to follow you or find you or do social media stuff, how would they do that? So
Instagram, Laird & Co _mentoring, I think it is. Yeah, it is. I've got a website, lairdandco.co.uk. Not really on Facebook, so don't use that. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not a big social media fan, but I understand the benefits of it. So Instagram, DM me on that. I'll get back to you if you want me, or you can get hold of me through website. My email's on there.
Outstanding. Well, we've been rolling for just about an hour here. Do you have? First off, I can't thank you enough, because this is a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on and being able to chat with me. There's so many really great points in here that I don't think I can. I'm going to run out of space. Basically, I usually try to cut these down to little 1-minute segments or 30-second little tidbits, but I got so many of them now. I don't even know how I'm going to put them all out. But any final thoughts on, authenticity, being authentic, anything that we didn't touch on?
Just a big one. Firstly, I really appreciate you having me on and reaching out to me. And I know we've been trying to set this up for quite a long time. So I really appreciate being patient as well, getting me on here. But yeah, with authenticity, it's just about really having a look at yourself and looking at your values and what's important to you. And, I know you're trying to cut it short now, but
oh no, go ahead. Like we got time. I just dive in.
What I find interesting is, and you might have found this, maybe you've already reflected on it, but when I was looking at who I was, I had to go right back to it. Well, who was I before I joined the military? Who was I as a child before the kind of world got a hold of me? What were my loves? What were my passions? And when I look back then, I could see back then, I really kind of loved people. I loved being out in nature. I did judo as a child at 11-year-old. So that journey started very young. And I looked at all these loves, and then I was like, okay, maybe that's who I naturally am then. And those are the things that I brought back into my life when I left the military and when I was finding out who I was. So I think it's quite good to look back at your childhood sometimes and go, well, what did I love before the world kind of told me that's not cool, or your social circles changed? What do I actually love, not what other people love? So as I said, so kind of learn who you are as a person, be constantly self-aware, pick yourself up for things, and have people around you as well that can give you criticism without you taking offense, can see your blind spots, so they can pick you up for maybe when you're veering off your value system. I think it's super important having accountability.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that humility piece is probably one of the hardest things I've had to learn, was like actually listening to other people when they say, maybe you shouldn't do that, and going, maybe I shouldn't do that. But like having the honest assessment, the ability to just listen to what they say, whether or not you accept it or not, cool. But just listen, and having the humility to like, they might know what they're talking about. Yeah. Who knows, right?
Yeah. 100%. And that empathetic mindset as well really is a game changer, I think. Like, stop judging other people. If you were them, you'd be doing the things that they're doing.
Yeah.
You need to remind yourself of that. So everyone struggles. Everyone's going through life. Have that empathetic mindset all the time and just be your true self.
Yeah. I dealt with that with my anger, actually. That was had a lot of anger, a lot of rage, didn't really know what to do with it, didn't know how to handle it. And then my doc and I were working for quite a while on it, and was, trying to find that empathetic state. And my mom was a hippie. So like, growing up, it was like all about empathy and being in touch with your feelings and all these things. And then I joined the Army, and I was like, screw feelings. I don't need these things. But there was a point, I was in the car, my wife and my boys were in the car with me, and this guy was just like trying to cut me off, get into traffic, and I was preventing him for some reason. I don't know why. But then I realized in that second, I was like, I've been that guy trying to get into a lane that, maybe you missed it. What, it doesn't matter. Like, you need to be on that exit. And it doesn't matter at this point. You just have to get into that exit. You're not thinking about anybody else. And then I was like, oh yeah, I've been that guy. And then I realized that just the ability to allow that person into the lane, like it's not going to affect me that badly, right? Like, oh no, I'm going to be half a second later than I was going to be when I got there. Right? But that started the empathetic mindset for me, was going, I've been there. And once you can put yourself there, then you go, oh, okay. Yeah. I get it now. And it allows you to
practice it, don't you?
Oh boy. Oh, it really is. It's work. You have to, I say this in jiu-jitsu. I say this in, advocacy. I say it in basically everything I do, is that there's 4 stages. When you're trying to change, the first step is understanding you need to change. So that, I don't really count that as like it, but once you understand that, you're going to try and you're going to fail. 100% right off the bat. After a while of doing that, you're going to get to a point where you can try and you're going to you're going to see the opportunity first, but you're not going to be able to do anything about it. You're just going to see that it's there. That's a win. For instance, when you're a white belt and you're rolling around and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I saw there was an armbar there. And you're like, yes, good. That, don't even worry about going for it. But like,
yeah,
excellent. That was a win. Same thing with anger. Same thing with, being positive or self-talk or any of those things, is that there's going to be a point where you go, I'm getting angry. Just that is the win, going, oh man, okay, I'm too angry right now. Then you're going to say again?
Self-awareness.
Yeah. The second part of that is when you're going to try something and you're going to fail. And then you're going to try that enough times where you're going to try it and it's going to kind of work, but not 100%. And then you're going to do that enough to a point where you're going to try it and it's going to work. And then you just do that over and over and over again. It's the same thing in jiu-jitsu, right? You learn how to do an arm bar. You see it. There's that spot. They gave me their arm. And you're going to go for it and you're not going to make it, right? You're going to give too much space. You're not going to hold on to the arm, whatever. It's going to fail. And you do it 700 more times and then you're going to kind of get it, but it's not going to be set up right. And if anybody knows what they're doing, they're going to get out of it. And then eventually you get to a point where you can lock that arm bar in and you can work the steps to get there. And so again, I remind myself of that pretty regularly, of just seeing it. That's a win. Take it as a win. Okay, good. Now, and then just practice it over and over and over and over.
Yeah. It's literally the definition of neuroplasticity, isn't it? Creating those new pathways in your brain. And we have to just consciously do it until it becomes an unconscious habit. So
yeah, and that is being truly authentic, is going through that process of just the work, right?
Yeah, you got to be forgiving, haven't you, to yourself, not just others. Military people as well. Well, anyone, but you can live in shame, and that's toxic. Constantly beating yourself up for the past and things you've done. I talk about guilt a little bit sometimes. About people think guilt's a bad thing, and I'm like, no, guilt's good. Guilt's your conscience saying you're not happy with what you did and you want to make a change, whether that's make amends with someone, whether that's change of behavior, or whether that's just, I'm not doing it again. Yeah, that's a good thing. It's when it takes over us and we into shame and when we believe we are that bad thing. And that happens with a lot of military people thinking about things from the past, trauma and things like that. They start to believe that, they are that. So, yeah, again, I've gone off on a tangent. I could talk about this stuff all day.
It's all good, man. I got time. I actually brought up an interesting point, was the fact that in Canada, we struggle with this quite a bit in Canada. And, we were talking a bit before how big Canada actually is and how small our military is. And so when people get out of the army here, or get out of the military here, I do say army a lot. I just realized I say army in place of military all the time, but whatever. When people get out, we go back to wherever we were, unless you're near a base, which there aren't many here. You're gone. Like, you don't have, maybe there's 1 or 2 veterans. I had a buddy of mine who lived in Flin Flon, Manitoba, which is way up north in the middle of friggin' nowhere. The closest city is a 7 or 8 hour drive, right? He's out in the bush. And he doesn't see anybody. Like, and in terms of being around the brotherhood or being around the teams, it just there's no one up there. I think there was one vet from Korea. And that was it. So here we lose that very quickly. And I was wondering, is it similar in the UK? Do people just kind of scatter? But I was thinking that it was because it's such a smaller actual area, you might have an easier time getting together with the boys. Or do you find that, or is it as challenging?
So we're obviously not on the scale that you're on, spread out. But I we're based in Scotland, and there's obviously guys from all over the country. So the guys that are maybe closest to in the military, none of us live near each other nowadays at all. But with regards to military brotherhood, I guess, there's still other Marines that live in the town that I live in, and paras and things like that, which I'm friends with. So with regards to having military people around us, there's guys I served with in this town. Interestingly enough, because I wasn't from this town, I didn't realize they were from this town when I was in, because I was brought up in the Northeast, so I kind of hung around a lot of the people from the Northeast. But yeah, so no, we don't. You'd be able to find other military personnel around you, whether you've served with them or not. It's a different matter. But obviously we're a lot smaller country than you.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a difference. I never actually. I don't think I've ever asked anybody that, and I was wondering about it because even
it's a real
States,
good reflection of an issue that you'll have over there. Isolation is going to be a real thing over there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a thing here, and we're a lot smaller than you, so that's a big issue.
Yeah, we that's why I pushed this network so hard. That was the big another reason why I did the podcast was the fact that I can't talk to everybody, across the country unless I'm doing something with this network, and this is gold. Like the fact that we can.
Yeah.
I was imagining this a little while ago was like the legions started because it would guys needed to get together to be able to process some of the stuff from the wars and trying to actually just be around one another again, and that brought everybody together. Here in Canada, the legions are starting to die because we all have separated and we're not using them for that anymore because we have this. And I was just like, man, imagine having the ability 70 years ago, 80 years ago, guys from World War II being able to just call each other, video chat with each other, show each other their kids, and stay in constant contact without having to mail a letter or hope to see them at the Legion and on the next go around or at that Remembrance Day ceremony or whatever. Because my granddad, he was an engineer in World War II, and when he left, he was gone. Like that was it. He didn't see anybody. He never went to Remembrance Day ceremonies. Didn't go to Legion. Never saw another vet for years. And him and I had a little bit of a conversation after I got back from Afghanistan, and gave each other a little bit of a nod. We all of a sudden recognized what we had been through, and he started telling me a little bit about being in Europe, and I could see just that little bit of weight come off of his shoulders. Finally, after 70 plus years, he could finally talk to somebody. And I think it's so important that we talk to each other because, man, nobody understands vets like vets.
Yeah, super important. We've got a similar problem with the Legions over here. They're all shutting down over here as well. It's a bit of the kind of young generation and they're interested. I never really thought of why. And I guess, like you said, maybe because of platforms like this, people, the beauty of communications now, they maybe don't feel like they need to meet up in a Legion every week, which is, super interesting you say that. But, isolation is one thing we do need to watch out for. I always tell people, like, what's the biggest punishment in prison? And it's not to put you in a cell with someone who's done some hideous crime. It's to put you in your own cell in isolation. Yeah. It's the worst punishment. And someone told me a statistic that came out not long ago that I think it's as much as 80% of suicides now are never actually reached out for help.
Yeah.
And that's because the first thing we do when we're in a hard place, and I've been there, is to isolate. So like you said, talking is the most important thing to do. And if you're struggling, obviously to reach out, and it's not easy, but we're we're both here walking, talking examples of people that have been through struggle and, you know, have come out the better side of it. You know, if we can do it, then absolutely anybody can. Well, definitely.
Absolutely. I am not special by any means. It just takes the work, putting the work in. Well, brother, I can't thank you enough here. It has been absolutely outstanding chatting with you. It's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to putting this episode out, and I think you got lots to pass on. You're going to probably gain some fans from overseas for you. Technically, we're overseas. I always think anytime I always hear overseas, I'm always thinking Europe for some reason. Okay, like it's always, for us, it's somewhere else.
Yeah,
but for you guys, I guess we're overseas from you. So
you are, yeah.
I'm sure you'll get some fans. So I just, again, thank you very much for being on here. We'll have to get you back on at some point. And as well, anybody else you think that would be good for this, let me know. We'll reach out to them. It'd be awesome.
I love it. Thanks. Really appreciate your time as well. So thank you.
That concludes another episode of The Toolbox. I really appreciate y'all listening. It has been my absolute pleasure bringing you this guest. If you enjoyed what you heard, please like, share, subscribe, do all that other wicked stuff. It helps me keep the lights on. To all those out there putting it on the line every day, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you. Military, veterans, first responders, civil servants, you name it. Keep this place running, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you. Don't forget, stay open, stay humble, stay focused, with grace, not slack. Chimo.